I'm Antoine Gregory, fashion stylist and founder of Black Fashion Fair. In today's show studio discussion, we'll be discussing the future of photography as told through the lens of emerging Black photographers. We are joined by Quil, Ahmad Barber, and Donté Maurice of AB+DM. Amandla Baraka was scheduled, but she could not be here today. I just wanted to find out a bit more about you guys' work and who you are as artists, and also your September issue covers. Can you guys introduce yourselves and explore some of your work with us? Donté
Yeah,
and Ahmad, you can
so
start.
so we're ABDM Studio. I'm
I'm
Ahmad.
Donté.
And we've been working together for a little over 2 years now. Um, our launch into this emerging platform was our Kerry Washington and Zendaya September covers. I guess the interesting thing with both of those is they were done completely different production wise. One was a virtual cover, and then the other one we got to like do this big old like set and
Mhm.
house and thing.
And that was really our first like major fashion cover that we've ever gotten. Like I guess both of them were.
Yeah.
And so I guess kind of being thrown into this world now has been a really whirlwind experience.
Yeah, it was amazing on this hike to work with an all black team,
Mhm.
have a super diverse production team, to have all black designers and everything, and have them featured on that particular platform was just amazing.
And when you guys shot Zendaya, you said you were obviously really there. So when you did the virtual cover, how was that? How was that
Mhm.
experience?
That was tough.
It
I
was tough.
think,
Yeah, it was very frustrating.
yeah, because we had to go through a whole like photography one-on-one lesson with the assistant that was there. Because initially they wanted to do it all through Zoom, and we're just like, we don't think that's going to work out properly.
Yeah,
And so we just kind of like consulted some of the people that we knew, just kind of figuring out what the best way to kind of go about this. And so what we decided to do is just send the whole camera package and all those things to her assistant's house. And the night before, we just kind of talked to her through like over the phone and FaceTime how to set everything up, how to do tether, how to do the camera and all those things. And then we did a recap on the actual shoot day before everything started. And then everything just kind of went like a tornado after that.
yeah, and I mean it was more so tough mainly because we're shooting like we as photographers have a perspective and some angles in mind and how things should be shot, but it's hard to communicate that when you're not there and to say like we're getting shots sent via like tethered in and sent to us, and it's like a slight delay. So
Yeah.
like we're telling them to move down or move up, or the
Mhm.
focus is off when that's already like 10 shots
Yeah.
behind.
Plus, it's outside, and the UV index that day was like 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
So it was definitely like things overheating at the same
it's a
time.
mess.
We're like trying to call like different people, seeing what's going on. The clients are on a Zoom call at the same time. We're trying to figure out everything.
Yeah, the Zoom failed, and then like their device, so they were zooming in with an iPad, and then their iPad died.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we didn't have anyone to talk to, but we're seeing images come in and they're like completely not what the client is want. Also the client is on Zoom with us too,
yeah,
so they're looking at it like, oh well, that's not it.
yeah.
That's not what
Right,
we
right.
want.
And then while like that's coming in, like we have the ability to like control the settings and stuff like that. So like we're controlling her camera settings. Like if she's shooting, like we can stop the camera, we can shoot for her, we can like change the f-stop and all that stuff like that while everything is kind of going on at the same time. And I think the one great thing about that is like how Carrie was really receptive to all the feedback that we gave and like those to the poses, even if it like didn't come through clearly as it should. Like she was
Yeah,
down to try anything, which is
yeah.
really dope.
And she had like, though it was hot and there was a lot of changes and things like that. I think we did like 5 or 6 looks that day. It was a lot of changes with no styling team, like very
On
minimal
site, yeah.
glam, all that type of stuff.
That's
So like
insane.
yeah. And then we only had I think like 3 or 4 hours of actual shooting time. So it was like all of that. Plus we're fighting with the sun with no modifiers, and
And
it
only
was
the
just a lot.
backyard.
And, oh yeah, and
Or
we're
was
in
it
a
the front yard?
backyard. No, front
It
yard.
was only the front yard.
Yeah, it was in the front yard. So yeah, those two, like they had two different obstacles, but
Are we supposed
um
to say that?
what? Oh yeah,
Oh.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I think with that being said, when you guys are shooting and you guys are creating your images, what is that experience like? How do you get to the place of saying, like, these are the type of images we want to create. Like, how do you get to that space? And how did you guys know like who you were as artists?
I think with us, because we had these kind of solo experience beforehand, and then coming together, we respected each other's work so much. And we understand that each other has different visions. Like I'm more like portraiture and intimacy, and Ahmad is more fashion and movement. So when it comes to even putting together mood boards, even coming to shoots, because we have those different perspectives, everything gets covered. And so we're able to trust each other with each other's vision. And since we are learning from each other, we can interchange roles when we need to as well.
Yeah, and having like those fundamental technical skills, but also having a lot of imagination and creativity involved as well is super helpful. But our process in terms of how we approach the shoot is generally the same. We come to the table with a mood board and kind of like a shot list of what we want to execute, pull in all our references, and then break down like what equipment we would need or what the location is going to be and things like that. And that's all like collaborative between us and the rest of the team.
Plus
as
the
well.
research and like equipment. We do a lot of like YouTube video watching, trying to figure out, looking at BTS, because like we're self-taught too. So it's like trying to figure out those things and experimenting on set of like which would actually look better and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that like kind of like leads to my next question, where it's like, in working with you guys with Black Fashion Fair and creating the images that we did create, a lot of the time like you guys would just switch positions, and it was almost seamless, as if Donté would know when like you were ready to like do something else, or like and vice versa. So how did that happen? Like, do you think that was just like a natural progression for you guys, or it was just like?
It's a learning thing first. I think we had very clear ideas on how we wanted to approach a shot. Like for example, this is something that we know, like if it's a wider shot, I'm probably going to approach it first because my purview is generally wider. But if we know that it's a closer, more like tied in crop shot, Dante's probably going to approach that. But while shooting, we kind of just fill it out. Unless we discuss like, this is my shot I want to take first, or like this is the look I want to shoot.
And sometimes it goes even simpler too. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, I don't like this look.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing
it. That's generally how it goes. Donté does it. If he's not feeling it, he has to see it shot first and then kind of like get some opinion. I think
with you guys both being self-taught, do you guys ever feel like that becomes like an issue for, I guess, how your work is viewed, or like how you guys view each other's work?
I think it used to.
Okay.
I think it's used to. I think we're definitely overcoming that narrative or idea perspective against our work, because a lot of the stuff that we've released thus far have been very technical. It's like it's not just a camera and us. Like we've had a lot of production involved, a lot of equipment involved, a lot of different things that we had to be mindful of on set with our clients.
And it's been a new experience too.
Yeah. So I think, before then we definitely weren't sure, like, okay, do we know everything that we need to know? But I think now we're definitely secure in knowing exactly how much we know and what our capabilities are.
Right. Okay. I mean, thank you. Quil, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work as well?
Okay. Well, I'm Quil Lemons. I think my work goes in between being both an editorial space, but also an art space. What particularly do you want me to talk about?
Well, just tell us a bit more about your process and some of the images that you've made over the years that are important to you, or that you feel show who you are artistically.
Okay. Well, I think it would be really cool to talk about the Pamela cover, because they were like talking about their virtual shoot, and I think it was approached in the same way, where it's like, how do you do a cover when you're not there? And that was like insane, because I was at my mother's house in quarantine with all of my siblings, and so like trying to do a virtual shoot through like FaceTime with a bunch of siblings in the background, was really interesting, to say the least. But I was like, oh, well, I didn't want to really hold this idea that the only way to take a photograph would be me being physically there. And especially during the time of the pandemic, it's like we couldn't be physically there. So I wanted to really challenge myself to make images in the same way, and like approaching it no differently. And so that's like what we did with this shoot. And it was just me and her. And it was really interesting to get a FaceTime call from Pamela Anderson. Like, hey, I'm like, "Girl, you are Pamela Anderson. Like, I've seen you on TV my entire like life." And it was just a very like natural thing. And it was not much of, it was like very much of a bare bones production because she couldn't have many people in her space. So it was just her team and like guiding people that don't have, like, they're like a makeup artist is like holding the camera and they don't really understand. So like it was like kind of the same thing where you're like trying to tell someone how to maneuver the camera, but like giving them instructions on like how you see the world through a little camera lens is like very very challenging and more challenging than actually being physically there. Cause and then it's like, yeah, delays with like Wi-Fi. And also it's like I feel like I like couldn't control talent in the same way I would. And so it's like a little bit more of like a wrangling thing. It's like, oh, like trust me, get like do this movement. And then like, well, a person is still gonna position themselves in the best way, especially when they can see themselves. And so it was just like a learning curve with that cover in itself. I think to really get an understanding of who I am, I think you have to go back to like the Glitter Boys project, which is like further down on my website. I think that was the one that like really for me, I was like, I'm a photographer. This is my space. And that was done in like 2017 on my dorm room's patio. It's a little bit further down, right there. And I shot this and it was just me coming of age and like understanding my queerness and like using photography as a space to just express myself like fully. And yeah, so that was the one that really set it off and really was me owning myself as a photographer and like really claiming that title. But then I had to really go and learn like how to, because I shoot in film, so I had to really learn how to meter, how to get these images to be like just as clean and crisp every time. And because like there's no wiggle room with film, and like for some of these, like I remember when I was doing this project, like I was shoot and I would have to go back and reshoot because I really did not understand like the science of like photography, which is like the f-stop and like in metering. But then like after that project, I like took a year to really just learn photography at its core. And went from using 35 to going to 120 and everything went. And I just had a lot more information, a lot more room to play around with. I think the second project I want to talk about is like the stuff I did with my family, because I feel like a lot of my work, I shoot like editorials with my family, which is like, people always are like, wait, like what? Like you don't use real models? And I'm like, no, not really. I really just rather cast my friends and like people that I'm really comfortable with, because then like it's just a way more fun experience. And I think you can go to the Welcome Home projects. I think that is the one I did with, or the Purple project.
Let's pick one.
The purple one. You can go with the one with the dress. That's the one where, like, as soon as I learned how to do medium format, I went home and told my mom, like, shooting all of my family in these dresses. But like, I didn't really tell them it was gonna like premiere on Vogue, and my mom was like, "Bitch, why didn't you tell me? I got my fucking hair done."
I remember these images and feeling like these were like almost the first images where like I actually like saw you as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these are like they were really great because of that, because it showed you in a way that, you know, that showed so much growth in who you were as a, just not as a person, but just as a photographer.
Yeah. This was like really special because like I really didn't know. It was my first time really using the medium format camera, and like the time I like used it once before, and I like set my settings lower than what the light could absorb, so it was just like a longer exposure, so a lot of the images ended up being blurry, which worked for the cover I was shooting. It was I was doing a cover with Jungle Pussy, and like it was over her ass, and it was just like blurry, and it worked for that. But like I was like, I need these ones to be like crisp and solid, everyone in focus. So like when I developed it, I was like, oh wow, like I actually did this shit. Like this is amazing, and I'm really excited to share it. But yeah, that's kind of what I do. I kind of feel like I always live in a space that's like I'm in fashion, but I'm not. I'm in art, but I'm not. I just kind of do my own thing, and that's kind of how I would describe my career.
Well, and I guess that leads me to like the next question, which is like, how do you guys separate, you know, doing like personal work and like commercial work? How do you kind of balance like having to like shoot for a ID or a Vogue or an InStyle, but also have, you know, the personal work that actually means something, like shooting your family or like shooting your friends, like work that speaks to who you are?
I think for us personally, it's becoming a little bit harder to balance because of course, like the pandemic being a big thing too. And I think also with the ideas that Ahmad and I have, it sometimes seems a lot bigger than where we are. So it takes a lot more effort to get things down to Atlanta to be able to work and do what we really, really want to do. Before this, we were just kind of going bare bones with everything, like no makeup artists, no stylists, we were doing everything. But now I feel like we wanted to kind of expand our personal work so people can get a more of an idea of who we are and what we can do. Because we love the work that we have now, but it's only a little taste of like what we can actually say, the stories that we want to tell. And I think that's one of the things that we kind of been striving to do now, is kind of expand who we are and allow everybody to get more of a taste of our style, what we love, you know, our experiences and all like that.
Right.
I feel like I've had like the opposite experiences where I've done the personal projects first, and then like I had to really carve out a lane for myself in editorial, and like allow people to understand that like I was capable of doing that, because people were reading these more of like in an artistic space, or like somebody that was just going to do these projects and that would be it. And I'm like, no, I actually can like do whatever I want to do. And I think it's just like, one, like internalizing that where yourself is just being like, yeah, there's no limits here. And then be like getting people to like really, really understand just like the versatility. And yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it was just, I think the first time I actually like was commissioned was I did a story for Allure, and it was a digital story on good hair. And they were like, oh, well, like you actually really can do this. I'm like, yeah, like what do you like? It's so you're like when you have to go and pivot between doing like commercial and like your own shit, and like I don't understand how, like why people don't get, like if you can take a really crisp photo of like your like my grandmother, and then like why wouldn't I be able to do it for a cover or a publication? I don't know, like for some reason people always want to box you in, and it's like, no, like you are an artist, so you have a bunch of different ideas, and it's like, yeah, I'm not limiting myself, so I don't know.
And just piggybacking off of that, I think we've had that same experience too. I think pre September issues, like we've worked with magazines and stuff, but it's always like, you know, we focus more on our personal stuff and like these personal series or these personal images that, you know, we just did for our Instagram and stuff like that. And I think after that, it's kind of like, oh, okay, you guys have the capabilities to doing this editorial stuff. So like now you're in this editorial world, and now we're trying to bridge those two to where we can maybe shoot some of these celebrities and people like that from our personal lives, perspectives. And you know, be a little bit unexpected and things like that, but it's always a balance between brands and what people are comfortable with.
And I think like even from our personal work that we've done, it was still hard to even get noticed or even get like seen by these magazines. Like I know it was very discouraging for us at this point, kind of being, of course, in Atlanta.
Yeah, the locality was a big deal for us,
which people overlooked anyway. And so it's like we're creating this good work here, and nobody would ever take notice. Nobody would ever say anything. Like there'd be like a few trickle-ins here and there, but it would just be like, okay, you're following, you're watching, but are you going to help us get it? Are you going to book us for something?
Do you still think though, with social media and how big it is, that where you actually are matters? Because I feel like it wouldn't matter.
Yes and no. I think it matters so a lot. What we're learning is the editorial world is very fast. So there's not always the time to ship or fly someone out or travel in anything. So a lot of the things are like, we have a shoot tomorrow at 9:00. Are you available? And, you know, we don't have the benefit of being in LA or New York where majority of those things happen. However, now we're learning that if you're good, they'll fly you out. So it's like, you know, like, so we've been able to kind of straddle both sides of that.
Yeah. But I think even for the artists that are here who are still trying to break out into like the editorial world, it's really hard for them because like they don't have the eyes on them. And I think that's why we kind of made it a mission to stay here a little bit longer, just because we want to be able to show that like, even though we are from Atlanta, we can produce quality work. You know, you can fly us out. You know, if you could fly out photographers from any other city to go anywhere else to shoot it, you can fly people out from here as well, just like Southern artists. Because I feel like as Southern artists, we have a really great perspective when it comes to different things.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool to kind of show that like we can do that. Like that's the mission, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Well, I think with like,
Can you repeat the question?
oh, we just like kept going. I can't, I don't remember like what the actual. Oh, I was just saying like, oh, does where you are matter when it comes to like your art and getting exposed, like getting your work exposed to like the world? And my thought process was just like, you know, social media is massive. Like it's made the world so much smaller, so that I think people are being discovered all over the world. And I don't think it's so much about where you are or where you're from, but like the quality of work.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that in a way, but I also just feel like, I don't know, because like being in New York, you would think that like the access would have been a lot easier. It took like a good 2 years just for anyone to really pay attention to what I was doing. And like, I don't know, I have a very guerrilla approach even to this day. Like I literally will just slide in someone's DM and be like, bitch, I'm gonna shoot for you. And then like it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. And yeah, I don't know. I just felt like, look, I don't know, location matters, but then it doesn't. Yes and no. It just all depends on like what, I don't know. I feel like social media definitely allowed me to leverage a lot of like what I could do in these like publications or in these spaces. But I'm just also like, I don't know, I've used it definitely as a tool to just place my work in front of that larger guard. But then I also feel like it's like so hard just being a Black person in this space, because like no matter what, our shit is not being read the same way. And like for just be the simple fact that we're Black, and it's just not like it takes a long time for it to be valued, which makes no sense to me.
Don't throw Young in there too.
I think it's I something that we get a lot with the people that we have the privilege to be on set with is like, first, we're Black.
Right.
But the second is like, we're young and Black. It's like, oh wait, you guys are professional and you know how to work a camera? What?
Yeah. Like, I watch myself sometimes and they're like, oh, are you the assistant? And I'm just like, my name is on the door. Like, what do you mean? And it's like, it's a bunch of like expectations of like where you, like what you should be and what you should look like and all of these things as you step into the space. So it's like, social media does open a lot of doors, but then it's still like when you physically are there, it's still a lot of hurdles. I don't know if that even answers the questions. It's just like, it's very hard being Black and young in this industry.
And I mean,
can I just add one?
Yes.
Okay, so I think social media also allows for a longer lens on who you are, that a portfolio is more concise in that. Like, you know, if you go to either of our Instagrams, you may have a whole different perspective on who we are as artists. But if you go to our portfolio, it's like more concise and more understanding like of what our aesthetic is or anything like that. And then it's kind of like, don't go into reading too deep into comments or who we follow and all those type of things. So I think social media is like a whole nother world into like what your brand is versus just like your perspective as an artist.
I also think social media is still like, we're still learning and it's still like evolving. We've only had Instagram for like what 10 years now, but still like I still think like as a whole society, we're still trying to understand what this actually is doing, and it's changing shit, but like I still can really quantify in like what ways, and like doors are opening, but like are they going to last forever, or is this just going to be like a moment? And I'm like, hopefully this is not just a moment and we're going to see like a real change in this. But yeah.
I think with like all the September issues and like so many being shot by Black photographers or Vogue being painted by Black artists, it's almost ushering this new era of Black image makers, right? And while it's great to see like so many like you and Donté and Ahmad who like are very young and who are Black shoot covers, how do you guys, how do we as an industry also like make sure that we like that you guys as photographers also like create work that lives beyond just this moment?
I think it's about taking it, like how you take advantage of the opportunity. We've been like preachers of that, and just making sure like you take advantage of the opportunities in a way that's going to resonate beyond just that opportunity. So like it's like a trickle down effect of one cementing you through that door, and so like it's no quote unquote looking back, but then two, you're ushering in the possibility of other Black creators being considered for that same job.
Yeah.
And both of those things are important. I think the people who have been privileged to shoot covers, let alone the September issues, have to also look at it as, you know, like, for example, for us, if there are opportunities that come down and we're like, okay, this maybe not, it's not something that aligns with where we're trying to go, but it aligns with, you know, our good friend over here, then we'll definitely try to recommend them and push them in the door, give them like, you know, that entryway into the door the same way we had.
Especially if we get jobs like in Atlanta too, we're making sure that like our friends are selling the job, like people that we know do great work down here, but just don't have access to like those bigger clientele. So we want to make sure that like at least they'll be on their radar too next time, even if it's just a suggestion, it doesn't go through, but they know that they're here for the next go round. Yeah. And I think it's also about like even when you get in these jobs, like you shouldn't strive to impress people, but like you should naturally just impress people by your work ethic. So a lot of times they think just as young as that we don't care that much, or that we're not going to read too much into things, that we just going to go out there and just be like whatever. Now, like when you can show that like you can balance what the OGs used to do back in the day, and make sure everything was precise and ready to go, while also still like having personality like all the youngins do now. Like we have the personality, we love having fun. We love dancing on set. We love making everything a fun experience, but also making sure we have everything orderly and ready to go, and that we can get everything that we need to do before call time is even up. Type of thing. And I think that's what keeps them pressing on, because a lot of times, like the industry now, we hear it so much that they're tired of the old regime.
Yeah.
But we have to show them as well that like, look, we can do this.
The new guard is in good hands.
Yeah,
like, it's in good hands.
Got covered.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's about like being technically on. I also just don't compromise on creativity to the point where like I know a few editors are like, this little boy. I'm like, I will not, because I'm just like, you've hired me to make my images in the way, like you hired me from my lens and my perspective. So I'm not going to change that. Like I'm not going to be someone that's like, here's the creative. I'm like, no, I have my own creative and I want to shoot this person how I see them. And I'm not compromising on that at all. Like I will not do that. I'm like, we can work together. I'm very collaborative, but like for, just like, I just had a few instances where it's just like, people want me to recreate the same cover. And I'm just like, why would you hire me? Why? Like you picked me for a reason. And I'm like, I give you what I give. So I always get really confused by that. And then I also think it's like really important, like what you said, I just want to double down on that, is really like, if the job is not right for me, I'm always referring another Black photographer for this, for like something I can't do. And like, yeah, well, like we're both all three of us are all like growing and like getting further into this, and it's happening very quickly, where it's like, oh, I might have to turn down a cover because it like the other options. And it's like, okay, well, no, like I'm going to definitely put my friends on and like push that further too, because like I don't want to be the only Black boy at the table with like 6 covers. I'm like happy that we're having this conversation, that we just went back to back on like multiple September issues.
I mean, so when it comes to artistic expression, what does Black representation mean to you, and how does it affect your images?
Well, like, that
loaded question.
I love that question.
It's a loaded question. Yeah. Like for me, like I always think about like when I'm on set, especially when I shoot Black women. Like even with the like Chloe and Halle image that's up right now, I'm like, my little sisters need to see this and really see themselves. So I was not going to do any like heavy retouching to like any arms to make them slimmer. I was not going to do anything to their skin to make it like, I didn't want to doctor this up in a way that like felt unachievable or unreal. And I feel like fashion for a long time was like sending an image that, one, you had to be super thin, you had to be super light. And I'm like, I'm not really into that. That's not real. Even with like the Jari, like even with the Teen Vogue cover with Yari, I was just like, I want to show her skin. Like she's a curvy girl. We're going to show her in fashions that like fit her body, but also really show it off. And like, why would I ever like show off the fact that she has an ass? Like, why would we hide her body? And I was like very adamant on that set. Like, I am not hiding her body. We're going to show this full figure woman and put her front and center, especially a trans woman on the cover of Teen Vogue. Of like, this is like, I have to do this right, but also like really honor her experience and but like center it and like make sure she looks amazing. And that's like what I think of.
I mean, I also think like as a stylist, like it's important to show clothes on real people because like it's the real people who buy them, not just models that you see on a runway. But it's also like important, like when I like for the Pure Moss campaign, that you know you're showing the clothes exactly how they are. Like there's no extra pinning, there's no, you know, so much editing in post. So it's just like you need to show things as real as possible. And I think even just referencing like Black culture in the way that you shoot images or like in the way that you style things, it's super important to like in the stories that we tell that there's some historical references. They're just like references that like we just know as people. And I'm sure like obviously that's the same in photography.
I forget I was speaking to recently, but I was just like, my existence in this space is not just like I didn't get here magically. Like I pull from like McLean, I pull from like Carrie Mae Weems, I pull from such a long lineage of like Black female photographers too. Like anytime I'm shooting a Black woman, I look at their shit and like one just like how Black women see themselves, and it's like, and I'm like, it's like I want to give it like a message of like strength and like power because I'm just like that, like they're the backbone of like our community. And I'm like, I just need to like reference that lineage and like always like make sure that my shit is like tying back, but also like pushing something new. And yeah, that's like what I do. But I want to hear what y'all do.
I think ours is kind of like a different perspective too. And I think what I love about it and just this conversation, it shows like the range that comes within the Black community. So I feel like a lot of times they kind of place the Black photography community in the urban perspective. And that's kind of the only story that they're open for us to tell. And I think that we wanted to kind of expand that, you know, just from like how we grew up. Like one of my grandma was one of the most fashionable people I know. Like she was luxury. Like she's like, I have a picture of like her, this Polaroid of her like in this super fur coat with her hair like pumped up, like everything, you know. And I think that we love the glamorous side, you know, of fashion, the glamorous side of being Black. You know, the diva era was pretty amazing, like the big beautiful afros, you know. And showing that like there is that side too that we can also illustrate, and that's there and that's open as an option.
Yeah, I mean, I think just underlying all of this, I think the biggest thing for us to represent is that Black is not monolithic, and there's not one particular Black image that encompasses everything or everyone. And so there's so much room for all of us to have a different perspective, but still connect to this community and to our community and represent our families and our heritage and how we grew up. And like how Donté was saying, like we try to come from this idea of bringing the luxury and glam back to the Black community and making sure that that whole idea is still resonating with Black people. You know, where everyone like that we remember and the references that we pull from is not from like very mundane or pedestrian perspective. Like, you know, we have portraits of our family members that are pretty like major, where, you know, they have these long dramatic outfits and all of these like extra things and trinkets and blah blah blah. So we want to make sure that that's infused in our work as well.
And I hate that like we can't find like Black glamorous references from like the 90s and back in the day. That was actually a wider range of people, not just the same people. So it's like we want to strive to also create those references for the future. Anytime like there's anybody that like hopefully wants to follow in our footsteps, you know, as in the fashion industry.
Well, I think when it comes to a lot of like Black imagery, it tends to like feel familiar because we share so many experiences as a people and culturally. And so like when it comes to making images, how do you make them personal, but also like keep your viewpoint unique? Because we do have so many shared experiences. So it's images can look similar very, very fast.
Yeah, I think one thing that you can never take away from us as an artist is the fact that we're all Black. So that is the linking thing. So our work doesn't necessarily all have to look alike or have to bleed the same blood or anything like that, because at the end of the day, we're all still family. You know, we're all still Black, and that's still going to come from our Black experience because that's how we grew up. Whether it may have been someone growing up in a wealthy home. You know, if they're wealthy, it's because their generations had that wealth, and just because, and same as if somebody had grew up in like very low income housing, you know, it's going to be like that same story. So
I think one way that we add that uniqueness is the contrast of things that seemingly don't belong together, or reference points that don't necessarily belong together, but in our head they do belong together. You know, like, is it this dress in this environment with this particular talent? Is it this angle on this particular environment? Things like that, to where it's coming from a completely, I don't want to say new, but a refreshed perspective, so that it's not done from the seemingly like stereotypical perspective.
I just pull from my upbringing. I'm from South Philly, and I'm just like, not many people grew up in South Philly, and they don't really understand that, like, yeah, there's like, similar to what you said, there's like a mix of like high and low, and with just like the Black experience. And I'm just like, I don't know. I think that I just always just pull from my just own personal experience, and I've just lived a really interesting life of just things that I'm like, a bunch of anomalies happen. Like, so I'm just like, my mom had me at 14. I'm just like, and I ended up at the new school. So it's just like, that's a lot of different worlds that collided. So I just saw a lot of things that came from a bunch of different cultures, and that's how we get some of the images.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that so much because I love the transition and the story and the travel of it all. Because I feel like that's what makes our art. You know, even with me, like I grew up in West Philly. And so I moved to Atlanta in around 2005. And the same with Ahmad. He grew up in Detroit and moved here in 2009. And so we all coming from different perspectives and like mixing our different perspectives, our Southern with the Northern and all that stuff like that. It makes things unique on its own.
Yeah.
Without having to force it to be unique. And I feel like that's the same with like Quil's experience of how like he's able to perfectly blend his personality with his editorial work. And I feel like that's what makes his work like unique to him.
Right.
And I think
So
that
what do you
separate yourself by just like doing exactly what you want, and always just like, I think it's just like trusting your gut. And like, I don't think that anyone can make the same work as you. Like, we can't make the same photograph no matter like how hard we tried. Like, it would still be, you're still making your own shit. No one can make the same photo as you. Like, we could use the same camera, it would look completely different.
Yeah.
I think just trusting that would make a different image.
so what do you guys think goes into creating the quintessential Black fashion image, or like at least the idea of it? Like, what does it need to say?
It needs to be authentic first. I think that's where a lot of non-BIPOC creatives get it wrong. You can't create our culture without being authentically from our culture. And I think that's where, you know, that's the fundamentals, that's the foundation of it. And I think if you can get it from a first authentic space where it's not like just performative or tokenized, you'll have a great starting point no matter whatever you put on top of that.
And I think like also digging deeper into the stories. If you go up on the website to the close-ups of Kokomo and Imani, yeah, right. Go a little bit down.
Down two more.
Down. We're kind of looks like they're becoming one head.
They're like really close to each other.
Yeah, right there. I think it's like I said before about digging deeper into the stories. Like what's the reason for the shot? And just kind of give a background on this shot. Like the reason for this shot is because in the story, you know, they were supposed to be a couple. They're becoming one. It's that intimacy effect, you know, and the fact that having their heads converge together, becoming one, like without even having to show that they like maybe because like, you know, I feel like a shot doesn't have to show that they're kissing, so that they're in a relationship. You know, with their heads coming together, they're intimate right there. Like you don't see a lot of relationships out there showing PDA like that anyway, but there's a certain intimacy and a certain closeness that shows people that they're one.
I think like for me, it is doing a lot of research, and just like knowing, like before I shoot anyone, especially like if it's if it's a person and not more like a fashion story, I'm like deep diving to see what you like and what you're interested in and how you want to present yourself in like the present moment. For the Candyman cover, that was with GQ Middle East, is at the top of of my website.
That was fire, by the way.
Thank you. That was a really fun one to do, just because I grew up with that movie. And like my grandmother's a really like horror movie buff, so I like the first things that we would do when I would get to her house is like put on like Freddy vs. Jason, and then she deep dive me into like the black horror movies, which is like Leprechaun, Candyman, Tales from the Crypt. And so like I knew a lot about the movie before like he even took on that role. But I wanted to like reference the original shot where like the bees are pouring out of his mouth, and I wanted to give something in editorial that was like really similar to that. Wait, can we pull it up? Because I want to show it, because like it's more, because like with the bee wings, it took me a long time to figure out how I was going to get this. If it's the first one. It took me a long time to figure out how the hell I was going to get this damn bee, like these bees onto his face. And like in a way that made sense, like for this, and like getting, and it was like a lot of like talks with GQ Middle East about trusting me. They were like, we're not sure if our audience would get the bees like that. I'm like, well, like they should, because they should want to see the movie. And
that's the point of the movie. So like, like how do you not get that part?
Yeah, but like it's another thing of like people don't know enough about like Black culture to like really know that like when Black people see this, they're gonna know that this is like a reference to the movie. Like they're gonna know this a reference to the movie and a reference to the original shots of like that shit scared the fuck out of me as a kid. Like it was like I was like, and then I was just like, this man could actually like come and kill me because he's Black. Like all other horror movies didn't make sense to me because there's like white people getting murdered. I'm like, okay.
It felt so far removed from like your like from your life. Like I don't like Freddy is white, like Jason is white, like these are not people I see daily anyway. So, but the fact that it was a Black man, it became real.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, when I was like doing this, I was like, I have to hit this on the nose. I was like, I need to like hit my points of like making like editorial images, but I'm like, or like Black, like the Black image lexicon. I was like, I need to reference this and like doing it in a way that's new. That I was like, I'm not going to make him come out of his mouth, but I was like, oh, let's do a beauty moment. And like, I like texted my set designer dude, and I was like, we need bees. We need bees. And like he somehow found these like realistic looking bees, and like we imposed it, and then I like scanned a bee wing against a negative, and then we enlarged it, and then that's like how that shot came about. But I'm like, that was like, this is like such like building upon like Black history to get that shot, and it's like not just it's not just like out of pulling shit out of the air. It's like, no, like I know my history, I know these movies, and I need to relay that to a larger audience that might not know this.
And I think so that makes me ask the question, like, how important is the reference? Like how important is it that we as Black creators, as stylists, as photographers, that we are referencing our own narratives, our own people, and we're owning the narratives that we do put out into the world?
I think the reference is important for two things. So you can, one, know what's been done, and then two, to know how you can create something new and refresh from that. I think, the idea of referencing or mood boarding gets a bad rep because a lot of times it turns into plagiarism, which is different,
Yeah.
like that's completely different. But if you can refer to something, take what you want to glean from that, make it your own. That's like the beauty and the creation of everything is, you can.
I think it's also thinking about that, like a lot of the references that we have today, of course, like we don't have that many Black references, but the references that we have today, some of them were stolen from us because we didn't have those things publicized like that, or not in like a public access. So even when it comes to like a referencing like non-BIPOC artists and all that stuff like that, like I don't feel any type of way about it because we probably done that beforehand, just like with music, as we've seen in freaking Dreamgirls and Elvis Presley and all that stuff like that. Like we've been doing this for a very, very long time. We just didn't get the coverage. And so now if we're at this point where we can create new references with our own faces and all that stuff like that, like I feel like that makes a better experience.
Yeah. And I definitely
selective references, because I don't want to do anything that falls into like menstrual. I don't want to reference like low points in like Black history, where it's like something that like is like triggering just for the act of being triggering. Like I do things that like really celebrate the Black body and don't like, I don't want to like go back and like pull something that's like racial trauma. I'm like, that does nothing. And like, cause we don't live that experience and we don't have like that experience. And so I always try to make sure that my references are like things that really like paint Black people in like the best light, and like one that like you can look at this image and feel like warmth and like feel like really good and like really good takeaway. Like, oh, I'm proud to be Black. I'm proud that we've done this. And I want to make sure that, I don't know, I always think about like, I just like there are older Black people that actually have lived through the civil rights movement and lived through slavery that will be seeing some of these, and like, well, some people have like, we're getting to a point where some people that were like slaves have like passed. Like, I
think that
we've not completely like, what did I just see? Like, just for the simple fact of like shock value. Like if I'm going to do something that's like heavily rooted in like our racial, like the racial trauma, I'm like, there's going to be like a specific way to do this in a way that's very tasteful. And I'm not going to do this just for the simple fact of like trauma porn.
I mean, I think we like, if you can pull up the black and white images of Kokomo like this, it's the one with the male model. And for me, like the whole point of this image was just like to reference the hands up, don't shoot.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just like, that was such an important thing, like being a teenager and going through like Mike Brown and like that whole, like, it was like very traumatic, but it was still like such a beautiful moment of like Black people coming together. And it's like to be able to reference that in the fashion images and in a way that you were saying that it's tasteful, it's like super important to me and like the work that I create as a stylist. So, and then if you can pull up the Pierre Moss photo, and it's a girl in a printed dress and she's pregnant. If you go to my Instagram, you can go to like, yeah, you pull up this image. If you look at her earrings, they're frames. And if it's a reference to Lorraine O'Grady's Art Is movement. And that's because she created that moment in Harlem because Black people weren't seeing, Black artists, like we're not seeing like in the avant-garde world when it came to art. And she challenged that. And for anyone who knows me, just like, that's like the whole idea of just like referencing is like to be able to like, there might be Black people who do not know about Lorraine O'Grady, but if you see this image and you do know, like that sticks out to you immediately. And it's like always having like these really small nuanced references to our culture and making sure that not only are you educating non-Black people, but like you can also educate your peers and your friends. So like, it's just like we need to always be in a place of referencing these people because a lot of the time they're not ever going to get, they've been erased from history. They're not going to get the credit that they've ever deserved. So like if we can just like keep instilling this in our art and our images that will live on forever, we're paying homage to them, but we're also like giving them something back.
Yeah, and also just like cementing and making sure that they just like document it. Yeah, I just think that
we're preserving it.
Yeah, because like as like we're all receiving the praise for what we do in real time, they didn't, and like they had to wait so much older or even dead to like even be acknowledged. And like, yeah, that's so important to me too, where it's like I'm going to make like, yeah, like I'm going to make sure that this is cemented, but also like I'm also making sure so many other people were like getting their due as well.
And yeah, it's really about just like paying homage in a way, like we have to pay homage to ourselves. Yeah. And that's what it's about. Like for us, for me, like paying homage to ourselves in a way that pays homage to them. And it's just like, do you mind pulling up the Lorraine O'Grady, like the Art Is performance, like the actual images from it?
I guess while there's a break right now, I do want to say like, I do agree that it's very important to like, pay homage to the people that came before us as well. We got to work on a shoot where we did get to pay homage to somebody that, we sadly didn't get the experience to see in person, but she is like amazing. The fact that we did get to pay homage in a way that we did in a much more different and modern way was like a really cool. I wish we could say more, and I can't wait for everybody to see
They're really good.
But that kind of opened my eyes even when we were researching who the person was and just kind of looking at the audience. Like even seeing how they looked at her when she was modeling, it was just like she never got to be around her peers.
Yeah,
you know.
It was, and I think it goes into like that whole idea of give them their roses while they can receive them. And it's just like, it's so many people that, you can name this laundry list of people that you want to pay homage to or like give them their roses. But I don't think we all as a community do it as often as we should. But it's something that we just have to do more and more, for sure.
I mean, that's how like even with the Spike Lee shoot, like that was like what the like. Well, one, when that shit came in and just as an email, I was like, oh, I gotta kill this, because I'm just like, you grew up just, that's such a part of our culture. Like he made so many movies that have been so important to just everyone. Like I was like, this is insane. And like also the simple fact of like when I shot him, he completely trusted me and like completely was just like down for any idea I had. It was like almost in a way where it was like passing the torch of like, oh, like here's this little boy that's like gonna come in and like shoot me, but like also it was like we just saw a lot of each other in our, like when we just was looking at each other and I'm like shooting him, he's just like, oh, we got this. And like when we left, like it was just like, wow, like I just like that, like you are a fixture of like my, like I do all of this because of you were able to come into this space and make so many things. I can't even like really put that into words, like what that experience was, just to like shoot someone that has had such an influence on my life and like even why I even picked up a fucking camera. So I'm like, I like that cover, I need to go get it because I still have not got it. Like I think of him in a way, I'm like still mentally processing that happened. And like, cause that's like unreal. Like that means so much to me to like have done that. And like, and then like when I got the scans back of like the negatives, I was just like, I did this well. Like, I'm like, I like there's like not one shot where I'm like, oh, this could have been better. I'm like, no, this is exactly who he is. And I think that's really important to me too. It's just like showing who these people really are, like as real people.
Well, I think that's also just like the difference in just like shooting Black subjects as Black people is that connection that you kind of innately have, whether like it's in photography or just like you go to school and there's another Black student, you guys automatically connect in a sense. You're in a corporate, I like work in corporate with just like, I didn't have any Black coworkers, but if we were doing like we were doing a fashion show or we were doing something and like someone was Black, we immediately clicked, whether they were just like helping out or the intern or the dresser, or just like we just connected because like it's just something that Black people have with each other. But I guess that my next question is just like, but how do we, I don't want it to like, it's becoming a thing where just like, Black artists shoot Black subjects, but I think we can't continue to see Black photographers only through the lens of Blackness. We have to like get into space where like Black artists are shooting white subjects for coverage and shooting white subjects for editorials and for their personal work, because like we can still do that. Like Black photographers can still do that, and they do that well. I think Micaiah has shot like Tilda Swinton with the last.
His recent cover with Sia is amazing.
Yeah, the cover with Sia is amazing. Selena Gomez, but just like giving Black photographers more access to shoot people beyond just Black people.
Yeah.
I think before we, it's kind of like this underlying hoop that we have to kind of like jump through, like where we have to prove ourselves a certain amount of times so that people can see like, okay, maybe they're ready to cross over, so to speak. But then it's also like, if you make it too far into the Black world or you shoot too many Black people, sometimes you're never even considered to shoot non-Black people because they're like, oh, that's all you do. But it's like, what came further, chicken or the egg? Am I only shooting Black people because those are the only opportunities that I'm getting, or I'm only shooting Black people because that's only who I want to shoot? But I do think it's important for any creative to get diverse opportunities so that you can show the full breadth of what you can do.
I mean, I think white photographers don't ever have that issue. where it's like they've been shooting white people, they've been shooting black people. Black people are just now getting the opportunity to shoot each other. So it's definitely just like it's definitely a black issue, and it's an industry wide issue where it's like when it comes to journalism, like black women should write about black women things, and they should write about black things, but they can also write about everything else, just like white women have been doing and white writers have been doing forever. So just like how do we get out of that space?
So I only shoot people I'm interested in, and sometimes that is white people, and I've like shot a few white people that I'm like, oh, I actually like what you're doing. But like for me, when that opportunity comes across the board, I'm like, I generally have no idea who you are, which happens with a lot of white people. I generally just don't know what you are and what you do. I just won't do it. I think that for a long time I used to like be like, oh my God, like why am I like only being considered for black things? And then I'm just like, I don't like, for me, I don't like, I like, it definitely is an issue. But I also am just like, I like half the time I don't really care to shoot white subjects, and I'm just going to be very frank about that. Like I don't really know what to do with that body 90% of the time, or like how to like really like capture it in a way, because I'm like, I just don't really have an interest. And that's just want that, like just keeping it 100. Like I don't really care. It does nothing for me or my work, and like 90% of the time, like especially like in the editorial space. But like there are a few white people that I'm like, oh, you be doing some cool shit, I will definitely shoot you.
Well, I think there's nothing wrong with wanting to shoot just black subjects. Like it is within our right to want to shoot black people. It's within our right to only want to shoot black people because we have been historically ostracized from like being photographed anyway. You know, just like at least let us be the ones who are shooting each other. But it's not like we absolutely have to have like if you don't want a diverse portfolio, that's absolutely your call as a black. You can make that as a black person, but I don't think it should be the industry's choice for you.
It's not the industry's choice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think I have one last question for you guys, and it's who are you creating for?
And I think, well, I think we're creating for us. I think that's the number one thing. I think too, we're creating also for the people that we're creating with. So whether that is with Zendaya, like we're trying to make sure you look the best, you feel the best, you enjoy the shoot. So it's not just about like us, but we're also shooting for the makeup artists. We're also shooting for the stylists. Like we want to make sure everybody is happy with the product that we're all producing, because it literally has pieces of us in it. Yeah, like we're all passionate about this. We're passionate about black designers, you know. We're passionate about really good hair. We're passionate about really great makeup. We're passionate about all this stuff. And if everybody is passionate about the same project, then we're all creating for each other. Like this is a team. This isn't, I understand that we may be the boss of that team on set, but it's still realizing that you were here for a reason. We're all brought here for a reason. We're brought here because we're all talented as crap, and that's it. So our goal is to create for everybody, not just us, because we're not the only person in the room.
I think in addition to that, I think we're creating for our community, the various communities that we're a part of, that have invested in us, supported us, that have given us so many opportunities, given us the advice and things like that. But then two, creating for the people that come after us to give them hope and give them, you know, the aspiration that, you know, it is possible. We're two self-taught photographers. I literally went to school for biology and math. Like I was headed to med school. Like this is not what I set my life out to do. But to be here and to show that, you know, no matter what you put your mind to, you can do it. Like if you say that you're going to be a fashion photographer and you want two photographers working together in the same set, it's possible, you know, things that some people don't have those reference points to see. That's like we're creating for those people, for sure.
I'm making work for myself and for little me. I always do that. Like I always am like, oh wow, like if you would have told me I would have done half the shit I've done like 5 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. I also am now at a point where I'm just like, how do I use my access in my space as a photographer to share other stories like the campaign I did for Playground with Sky Farm. For Sky Farm with Playground was just because I noticed that like, well, one, Sky Farm is led by artist Dan Cohen, and he has a farm where he grows all his vegetables, and then he gives them to communities that are in food deserts. And Playground was a coffee shop that through the pandemic have popped up with 5 refrigerators to bedside and was giving free produce to the entire bedside because it's technically a food desert. And I was like, how can I connect the dots here and link these two people that are doing really good things, but like Playground needs more access to these vegetables and he needs to come to Brooklyn. I'm like, this is a different way to like tell this story through fashion. And I don't really like, at this point, I'm just like, I don't care as much about like the numbers or the likes. I'm just like, this is about the story and like sharing this with the world, because like people need to know what they're doing, because it's like so fucking cool. And like I am now like in the space where I'm just like, how do I keep sharing stories that are this interesting and that are this cool and like super genuine and authentic? And like though I like do fashion shit, I'm like, it can be way more than that. It like fashion is like the start of it. And I'm just like, oh, it's just so much access here, that there's so much money here too. So much money is being made and so much money is being spent. And I'm just like, how do we center this and really give it back to our community? And I'm like really trying to figure out ways for myself. And like throughout the next year, you'll see what I'm trying to do. And I thought that was like the first step of like really using my space and my like proximity to really do something that's just not about me at all. And like really just centering different voices that I'm like, I feel like my voice as an artist has been centered for maybe the past 2 years. I'm just like, how do I shift this to someone else? So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. And that's what I'm making it for now.
How about you? Who are you creating for?
I'm creating for, I feel like so many people who are Black who have just been forgotten, and just like wanting to tell those stories and wanting to preserve Black fashion as it's happening today, as it happened decades ago, and as it happens in the future. Like just like preserving our history in a way that has never been done before. How like we barely can reference Black fashion images. So if I can like use you guys to help me create them, and use Quil and like so many Black photographers like to help me create these images that ultimately will be historic, because they'll be like some of the only references that we have. So like just to be on this call with you guys, I'm super grateful that you guys took it, and we had this opportunity to talk, and like we've all had opportunities to work together, and we will work together in the future, because we're the only ones who can tell our stories. So you guys have been doing such a great job, and I'm just happy that you guys like are finally getting like to a place where, you know, you're creating the work that you want to create, and that you can continue to create this work and do it on a scale that is grand and that everyone can see, and that some young Black kid in Philly or in Atlanta can see that they can do so much more than what their surroundings are.
Yeah,
sure.
Big shout out to Black Fashion Fair.
Thank you.